Okay, friends, welcome back to Five Agendas. Interestingly, I had a conversation with an individual this week who presented some material on on Laodicea being Babylon. Okay, fair enough. So the question is, what's the problem with that? Well, here's the thing, because when you read Revelation 17 and 18, even at the top of the page at my Bible, it says the fall of Babylon. So here's where and why it's important to know what Babylon is, because verse 5 of chapter 17, mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, okay, drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Seventh-day Adventist Church does not fit that description. This is Babylon that's going to fall, and because the 10 horns in combination with the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, so this eighth head, it says, the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore and shall make her desolate, naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So she's going to have a downfall very soon, and that's not the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So where does this leave the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Well, when you look up, it's very simple. The Roman Catholic Church is Babylon. So where does Laodicea, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, fit into all this? Well, when you look up daughter, Babylon, okay, in the Bible, you get these texts. Psalms 137:8, O daughter of Babylon, okay. Isaiah 47:1, O virgin daughter of Babylon, okay. Jeremiah 50:42, O daughter of Babylon. Jeremiah 51:33, daughter of Babylon, okay. The most important being Zechariah 2:7, deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon. So here is the coming out message for Laodicea, to come and deliver herself that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon, as well as those in Roman Catholicism, to Revelation 18:4, come out of her, my people. Okay, so this is where it gets down to precision. So hopefully we can share this with this individual and get the precision straight. No doubt that Seventh-day Adventist Church Laodicea is a daughter of Babylon, but this is important because Babylon is going to fall, and it's not saying that that the 10 horns hate the Adventist Church and eat her flesh and naked, burn her flesh with fire and so forth. So that's that. So this conversation should be interesting. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off. I think I can turn off this video because you won't need to see me no more. And what we're going to do is have a discussion that we printed from March 2020, titled Bible Parallels. And we talked about Daniel 11, 2 Thessalonians 2, and Revelation 13 and 17, and we compared them. But first we'll have some questions. So let me turn this off. Okay. All right, we'll just leave it like that. So first, some questions. Is it possible that the king of the north in Daniel 11 could be the seventh head? Pause and think about that. King of the north being the seventh head in Revelation 17, because it says in verse 10, there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, So that's the 6th. And the other, the 7th, is not yet come. So could this king of the north be that 7th that is not yet come? Because it says, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So just briefly, the 5 that are fallen: Justinian, Charlemagne, Otto the Great, Charles V, Napoleon. 5 are fallen. One is Victor Emmanuel. And the other is not yet come. So we can't put a name on him because we don't know. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So the question is, could he be the king of the north that comes to his end in Daniel 11? Okay. And could it be that same head that receives a deadly wound in Revelation 13? So when you compare them, you have one chapter in Daniel saying he comes to his end and none shall help him. In another chapter in Revelation, it says he only lasts for a short time in 17, and in 13, one of his heads receives a deadly wound. So does he come to his end? Does he only last for a short space because he received a deadly wound? Okay. So again, the question, could it be possible that the king of the north continues for a short space and then come to his end right here because of a deadly wound? I'll bring this up for you. Could it be possible that the man of sin, the son of perdition, in 2 Thessalonians, be the 8th head that comes after the 7th? That is, the beast that was, is not even he is the 8th, is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. So hint, hint, it says here in Revelation 17, he goeth into perdition. And in 2 Thessalonians, it says, okay, it uses that same word, perdition. Okay, and we'll get to that. So could it be that the man of sin, the son of perdition, is the 8th head that is to be revealed, that he continues for 42 months, or otherwise known as 3.5 years, after the 7th head receives a deadly wound? So we've had 5. One is, that's Victor Emmanuel, and he's passed, okay? But then it says the 7th, he comes for, is not yet come, but when he comes, he continues a short space because he receives a deadly wound. He comes to his end because he does what he does in Daniel 11, because he fights against the king of the south. And that, finishes chapter, that scenario finishes chapter 11 of Daniel. But there's this huge gap of things that take place that's revealed in Revelation between Daniel 11 and Daniel 12. A lot of people may not be aware of that. Okay. So this 8th head, could he be the man of sin? 42 months. After the 7th head receives a deadly wound, with him being the healing of the deadly wound, as the 8th head or king. The 7th head receiving a deadly wound, as it says, but the healing of that deadly wound is what produces the 8th. Because it says in 13, okay, in verse 3, one of his heads, okay, the 7th, okay, one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and then his deadly wound was healed with the 8th head. All the world wondered. And then in verse 5, and because of verse 4, and they worship the dragon, they worship the beast, who's able to make war with him. And then he was given a mouth speaking great things. This is after the deadly wound. This is after it's healed. Speaking blasphemies, power was given unto him. So in other words, it wasn't until the deadly wound and its healing that power was given unto him to continue 42 months, which means you cannot have the 1260, or these 42 months or 3.5 years, which are literal, but in our old understanding is that the 1260 ran from 538 to 1798. Pope received a deadly wound in 1798, but the Bible is saying the 42 months, 3.5 years comes after the deadly wound, after the healing, which means that prior understanding doesn't work based on what the Bible says any longer. So which means that this deadly wound, not denying what took place in 1798 with the Pope and all that, but we cannot no longer apply this deadly wound, which is future, because it has to be, because you can't have 1260 literal years, years or even days. It would make sense coming after 1798 if we take the Bible for what it's saying and let the Bible speak instead of trying to interpret it through our own previous understanding and ideas. Okay. So the seventh head receiving a deadly wound, but the healing of that deadly wound is what produces the eighth head or king that comes onto the world scene. And it says that, okay, question again, to be destroyed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. So in other words, we've always thought that this identity in 2 Thessalonians was the papacy, but it can't be, because this identity is destroyed with the brightness of Christ's coming. Whereas previously, before Christ comes, the woman is destroyed. So it can't be the woman that's destroyed with Christ coming, because she's destroyed before that. And it doesn't say she's resurrected to then be destroyed again a second time with the brightness of his coming. Doesn't make sense. So if you think about it, the seventh head receiving a deadly wound, and he only lasts for a short period of time because he received a deadly wound and because he came to his end in Daniel 11. And then this eighth head comes onto the world scene, which would be this identity in 2 Thessalonians, because it says he goes in perdition. In 2 Thessalonians, he's actually called what? Does anybody remember? Well, he's actually called in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3, the son of perdition. Why is he called the son of perdition? Because he goes into perdition. Have a think about that, okay? So is the Bible giving us the clues for the two remaining heads, the seventh and the eighth, or kings? Because 5 are fallen: Justinian, Charlemagne, Otto the Great, Charles V, and Napoleon. Okay, and then Victor Emmanuel VI. And so we're in between 6th and the 7th. When the 7th comes on, what? You're going to see it on the news. Okay, and won't it be interesting when whoever he is only lasts for a short period of time? He fights against the king of the south, and all this is being played out literally before our eyes, and we'll be able to say, oh, look at that. That's what that means. That's what it is. But will we be able to, when we have all this, interpreting this future stuff as has taken place in 1798, which doesn't work because the 1260 comes after. So you can't have it starting in 538. You'd have to have it starting in 1798 with the deadly wound, and then it's healing, and then 1260, which 1260 years brings us to the year 3000 something. Right? Doesn't make sense. Okay. Is it also possible that that wicked one, which in the Greek is hoanamos, and Thayer defines that as he in whom all iniquity, as it were, fixed its abode, something like that. The man, this wicked one, hoanamos, this man of sin, the son of perdition, eighth head or king, he opens up his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, 2, his tabernacle. How does he do that? By sitting in the temple of God, as it says in verse 4, 2 Thessalonians 2. He, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Okay. Third temple, Jerusalem. Zechariah, the 10 taking hold of him that is a Jew, the skirts of a Jew. We want to go with you. We've heard that God's with you. 7 Noahide laws going forth out of Jerusalem. False Shema, capital punishment for anyone who blasphemes the false Shema by saying that there is only one God. And having to say that, but blasphemy by saying that this one God thing is blasphemy in and of itself. Okay, so all right, showing himself that he is God. as an epic and final abomination of desolation, epic and final, against the true Elohim and the Elohim's true heavenly sanctuary, and the man in linen's true high priestly ministration of cleansing. Remember, our Savior strongly affirmed that a third temple that will be rebuilt, and we're going to see it. But what are you going to do when it does? How is that going to fit into the whole 1798, 508, 538 thing? Okay, regarding an apotelismatic future, 1260, 1290, 1335, when, oh, you know, the Bible says 1260 happened after the deadly wound, and sadly, we've been saying it came before, so we were wrong. It's time to admit it and move on with the correct interpretation. Okay, so we'll get back to this part with the harmony, but what we want to show right here is, as we just have a quick look at it. All right, so this is Daniel 11, and it would hurt, you know, help to read the whole chapter, but this is just from verse 40. It says, and at the time of the end shall the king of the south. Okay, and we'll get more into that, who this king of the south is. A lot of people don't like this idea. So this at the time of the end, the king of the south is going to push at him, which is the king of the north, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. And he, the king of the north, shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. So don't think of it as being, you know, chariots and horsemen, because they don't do that type of warfare anymore. So think of tanks and, you know, armed infantry and all that. You know. And then it says, he, the king of the north, shall enter also into the glorious land. What's the glorious land? Israel, Jerusalem. And many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape. So these ones are going to escape out of his, the king of the north's hand. Moab, Edom, Moab, chief of the children of Ammon. Okay, and we'll go into that more another time. Then it says, he, the king of the north, shall stretch forth his, king of the north's hand, also upon countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But the king of the north shall have power over the treasures of gold, of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at the king of the north's steps. We're going to see all this. So it's time to be familiar with this. It's not about trying to, you know, drive stakes into the ground with every single one of these points. But tidings out of the east and out of the north. So what direction would that be? The east and the north. So think of one big country and another powerful country right now that lies to the east and the north of this king of the north. So regarding this king of the north, you know, just think question mark, Holy Roman Empire. All right, therefore the king of the north shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. Okay, and the king of the north shall plant tabernacles of his, the king of the north's palace, between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. So what's that? What's between the seas? All right, the Mediterranean. You know, you look up in your Bible, in the back of your Bible, you may have a map. What is between the seas? Well, I look at my Bible, I see the Mediterranean Sea, and I see the Salt Sea. And I see, yeah, the glorious holy mountain. There was no other glorious holy mountain other than at the time, Jerusalem. So he plants the tabernacles between the seas, the glorious holy mountain. Yet he, the king of the north, shall come to his end. Why? Because he received a deadly wound and he was only prophesied to last for a short time. And none shall help him. Seventh head, question mark. Because interestingly, you're going to notice a possible parallel between the king of the north coming to his end here and one of the beast's heads receiving a deadly wound in Revelation 13, with the added detail in 17th chapter, which says the seventh head continues a short space. Ah, how interesting. All right, so I might need to, let's see, what can I do here? I'll bring this over a little bit. So, all right, so when you see this king of the, and you shall see, he comes to his end, you follow this line over here to Revelation 13:3, and I saw one of his heads, seventh head, as it were wounded to death, okay? And here he comes to his end, you follow this arrow down here to 17. It says, he, the seventh head, must continue short space. He continues a short space. He received a deadly wound, and he comes to his end. What a wonderful, fantastic, clear as crystal Bible parallel. Okay. So let's have a look at some of these other chapters and the lines that seem to be going all over the place, but when you just look at it carefully, it's meant to be easy. All right, 2 Thessalonians 2. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, that man of sin be revealed. Man of sin, he's going to be revealed. It calls him the son of perdition, eighth head. So you see this revealed, all right? You follow this up to after the seventh receives a deadly wound because he, was only to last a short space, and he came to his end. This man of sin is revealed after the seventh, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Okay. Is he revealed because it was healed? The deadly wound was healed. Okay. And then it calls him the son of perdition. So you follow this son of perdition up over here. He's to continue 42 months. This son of perdition. And then you follow the son of perdition down here to 17. Because that was in 13 right here. Continue 42 months. Son of perdition. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goes into perdition. Why does he go into perdition? Because he's the son of perdition. I mean, how clear is that? Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worship, so that he is as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. The eighth, son of perdition, because it's the eighth that goes right up until Christ's coming. It's not the papacy. She's, at this point, she's already been destroyed. Okay, we're about to. Because remember, it's the 10 that, in combination with this eighth head, that destroys the woman. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. So there's time coming, he's revealed, and this follows after the deadly wound was healed. And then all the world wonders after the beast. For the mystery of iniquity, not Satan, because the mystery of godliness is Christ, God manifest in the flesh. The mystery of iniquity is Satan. And he's, even now, mystery of it, iniquity, Satan, doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked, hoanamas, that wicked one, okay, the eighth head, be revealed after the deadly wound is healed. Whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. This isn't the seventh. The seventh receives a deadly wound. He's out of the picture. So eighth comes along, destroys the woman. So the woman can't be the one that fits that wicked that we've always been taught identity here in 2 Thessalonians, because, well, the eighth with the 10 kings, they destroy her. And then there's more time before Christ comes, but this one's destroyed with the brightness of his coming. So that wicked one can't be Satan, for isn't he destroyed after the 1,000 years? Of course. Neither can this be the woman of Revelation 17, for isn't she destroyed before Christ's coming, as Revelation 17 and 18 reveal? Don't let that point slip away. Whereas, doesn't it say that that wicked one is destroyed at Christ's coming? Even him whose coming is after or according to the working of Satan, this eighth head. When he comes along, his coming is according to the working of Satan, because Satan's the one that's, behind him. Okay? And he worships and follows Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. How does unrighteousness deceive? Only when it is perceived as righteousness. All right, keep that in mind as you keep forward with the Elohim Declaration series and all this false Shema, one God stuff, and false righteousness by faith, works, and everything else. Okay, so now Revelation 13. So we saw how one of his heads wounded to death, because it's the same as this king of the north who comes to his end, and because he must continue short space. This is linking all of these 4 chapters together, and it's basically talking about these same identities. The 7th being the one who continues short space because he comes to his end, because he received a deadly wound, and then the 8th being the son of perdition because he goes into perdition, and he continues 42 months. He comes after the 7th because the deadly wound was healed that was inflicted upon the 7th. And now it's healed, and this 8th comes along, and he's revealed. See how it all makes perfect sense? I mean, this was all confusing to me for a long time, and now it's like, wow, now you can actually start, linking and lining up and putting the pieces together of this wonderful puzzle. Okay. He saw one of his heads that were wounded to death, comes to his end, short space, his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshiped the dragon. So here's your dragon, which is Satan. There's your mystery of iniquity, which gave power to the beast, because this beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, he's the one that comes, as it says, as we just read, whose coming is according to the working of Satan. And they worship the beast, saying, who's like unto the beast, who's able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things. So notice how, if you line up Revelation 13 correctly, it's 1. Number 1, one of his heads receives a deadly wound. 2, then it's healed. And comes along your 8th head. Okay. All right. They worship the beast and the dragon, and ask these, terrible questions. And then there was given unto him, because this and this and this happened, then there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue. There's your 1260. There's your 42 months, which is here. It's, it's written as 42 months, which is 1260 days, which is literally 3.5 years. Which is why you cannot have the 1260 come after 1798. If we take the Bible for what it's saying, okay, we've always said, all right, the 1260 goes from 538 to 1798. Hold on a minute, the Bible's saying the 1260 comes after. So if we then make that correction and we say, okay, the 1260 comes after 1798, that's not going to work. Which means all this is yet future, which makes all this more important to know and understand, because this is a warning, so we can know what's going to take place and be ready for it. We have everything happening in the past. 508, 538, 1798. How are you going to know when this happens? You're going to be caught sleeping. That's what. Okay, so then this eighth, that was, comes after the seventh, received a deadly wound, was healed, and they worship the beast in this, because when this eighth comes along, he's revealed, he's the son of perdition. He goes into perdition, okay? He continues 42 months. It says, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God. It doesn't say the seventh does that, okay? It's not saying this is Babylon saying this. He, this eighth head, that actually, you can't have the eighth and the woman of Revelation 17 is the same identity because she doesn't destroy herself. So this eighth with the 10 kings destroy her. He opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle. So think about, and we'll go more about this at another time, Lord willing. How does he blaspheme his name and his tabernacle? We'll think third temple, and them that dwell in heaven. So this is a final abomination of desolation. Revelation 17. And there are 7 kings, and remember 5 are fallen. And these were the Roman, Holy Roman emperors that can only fit in here because the Bible says 5 kings. And there are 5 are fallen. It doesn't say tribes. It doesn't say people groups. It doesn't say nations. It says there are 7 kings. Okay, the first 5 are fallen. Justinian, Charlemagne, Otto the Great, Charles V, and Napoleon. And then it says for the 6th, and one is, that was Italy's King Victor Emmanuel. And that's where you have that whole scenario coming into the picture. Okay. And the other, the 7th head, is not yet come. And he hasn't. And when he cometh, he, the 7th head, must continue a short space. Why? Because he received a deadly wound. And he came to his end after that whole scenario with the king of the north and the king of the south, and after he planted the tabernacles of his palace in the glorious holy mountain. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it's time to keep studying. Okay, because he may have done that, but it's this 8th that is the son of perdition. Okay, that what? Sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God, blaspheming his name in his tabernacle. Okay, there's a true heavenly sanctuary. He builds the 3rd temple in Jerusalem. I mean, think about it. How else can you blaspheme God's name, his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven? By what he says and his does. Mouth full of blasphemy. Okay? So 7 kings, 5 are fallen. One is. Now he's gone. And the other, not yet come. But when he does, short time. Then he receives a deadly wound. He rocks around the area listed over here in Daniel 11. Comes to his end. And the beast that was, is not. Even he is the 8th. So there's your 8th head, and is of the 7, goeth into perdition. Okay? The 8th head, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So here's your comparison between 2 Thessalonians 2 and 13. Opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, sitteth in the temple of God, exalting himself, blasphemy against God, blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. Okay? So, yeah, how interesting. Pause this at any time and have a look at these. Follow these, these lines back and forth. Draw the conclusion. Okay? So we read these questions. Now, see the harmony of Revelation 13:17. Who is the replacement of the little horn that boasts blasphemy against heaven? The first beast of Revelation 13 with 7 heads. Okay, 7 heads. One of his heads were wounded, 10 horns, and 10 crowns on the 10 horns. It's a description: like a leopard, feet as a bear, mouth of a lion. Noting the little horn of Daniel 8 is not a head. Never has been, is not now, and never will be. That little horn is not a head. It says one of the heads, not a horn. Not one of the horns were wounded. It was a head. Okay? And never was that little horn ever a king. Okay? And it's that head who receives a deadly wound to one of its heads and is then healed, not a horn. Okay? John states, all the world then wonders after the beast. Worshipping the dragon, they gave power unto the beast, his seat, and great authority. As well as worshipping the beast, they ask, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? He is given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, with the power to continue 42 months, 1260 days, 3.5 years, to open his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. This, friends, is an abomination. In comparison to Revelation 17, there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen: Justinian, Charlemagne, Otto the Great, Charles V, and Napoleon Bonaparte. And he abdicated in 1814, which is exactly 1260 years after 554, when Justinian, the first of the 5 fallen kings, issued the royal pragmatic sanction that basically gave the little horn, this priest-king combined, the papacy, license to transgress and abominate for 1290 years until 1844, when the man in linen said that the vision and the transgression against that vision, being concerning the daily, it was to last 1290 years. And he answered the question, unto when is this vision concerning the daily and the transgression against it? He didn't say 1798. He said 1844, which was interesting about the correspondence that I mentioned earlier. The individual, Seventh-day Adventist Church saying Babylon, well, the daughter Babylon. But the woman of Revelation 17 is Babylon. But so I asked the question, with one of our about the man in linen saying that the 1290, which is the abomination period of time for the little horn to do what it did against the daily and Christ's high priestly administration for 1290 years, he said it went unto 1844, not 1798. The individual wrote back and said that that was misquoting SDA Bible commentary, which says, subtract 1290 years from 1798 and you reach 508. But the obvious problem with that is the Bible says that 1260 starts the ticking of the clock first, 1260 first, not 1290. So you can't have this 1290 starting in 508 and then 30 years later. It does not present the true 30-year gap. 554 going to 1814 with the abdication of Napoleon B, which is the 5th of the 5 kings that are fallen. And 30 years later at 1844, from 1814, is the only true 30-year gap. So it was interesting how, okay, the individual was saying that the SDA Church was Babylon, but then quote the Bible commentary to, uphold the mistake in some of the figures on the 1843 chart in the 1850 chart that listed the mistake in the figures as 508, 538, and 1798. So there's those 5 kings that are fallen, and one is, that's the 6th, Italy's King Victor Emmanuel, and the other, the 7th head or 7th king, is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Why? Well, now you know why. Because he receives a deadly wound. Hello? And he comes to his end. Because he receives a deadly wound in 13:3. Then the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, there's your 8th head or king, is of the 7, as he comes after them, Justinian, Charlemagne, or the great Charles V, Napoleon, Victor Emmanuel, and question mark, whoever the 7th is. We're going to find out. The 7th or 8th, this 8th, this beast that was, he's the 8th head or king of the 7, goes into perdition because he's called the son of perdition. If the 7th head or king only lasts a short space because of a deadly wound, is the healing of that wound the reason why the 8th head is of the 7 and emerges as the beast that was and is not the 8th? He continues 42 months or 3.5 years after the deadly wound, not before. And what God describes as overspreading abomination, an abomination of blasphemy against God himself, his name, his tabernacle, but also those that dwell in heaven. Please take time to notice the abominations of the little horn and the blasphemy of the beast of Revelation 13 and see how they are remarkably similar. It says in Daniel 8 and then in Revelation 13, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven. It cast down some of the hosts of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, Yeshua. By him the daily, Christ's high priestly administration was taken away for 1290 from 554 until, as you know, the daily, the transgression against it, unto when? Men and linen said of 2,300 days, 1844. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and an host was given him against the daily by reason of the transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground. And here's a reason why the paganism can't be the daily, because there it says the daily. He took away the daily and he cast the truth to the ground. Paganism is not the truth. Don't let that point be missed. And it practiced and prospered. Okay? So that's the blasphemy of the little horn, which is different from, well, see, it's similar, but the identities are different. That's that little horn. That's that priest king combined with Justinian and papacy, 554, issuing the royal pragmatic sanction. And then there's this blasphemy of the beast of Revelation 13. It says, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle. So both these individuals, these identities, attack the heavenly sanctuary message. And then they dwell in heaven. It was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. Okay? Wow. So that's that. But to keep this video shorter, I think what I'll do is we'll have this in a couple more parts, because I've got, a couple of charts here that I want to discuss with you. So stay tuned and watch the next video.